boats most of my life, but of course never anything this large. So it took me a while to plan the construction, and there were some difficulties to overcome. But God is wise and knows everything. He provides all we need. Do you have any more questions?
started. How are you guys all doing today? That's great. Good to see you guys here. Thanks for coming to our animal actor stage, where we will be presenting to you our sensational snakes today. So my name is Ben, this is Megan, and this is Karina, one of our snake handling experts, and we all have a question for you. Are you guys ready to meet some snakes, huh? All right, well, for those of you who said yes, great. For those of you who said no, too bad. We're going to meet them anyway.
All right, I'm so glad to hear that, because the first snake we're getting ready to meet is one of the most sensational snakes in our collection. They are waiting in the forest regions for their unsuspecting prey to wander on by, where they will reach out, grab hold of it, coil around it, and swallow it whole. You may have guessed it, we're getting ready to meet a python!
And here she is! This is Hannah. She is a ball python. This is a species of snake that can be found natively in the forest regions of Africa. Now, as Megan was saying, there are definitely some sensational things about this snake. For instance, did you know that this species can chase after you at a blinding speed of 1 mile per hour? That's right. They also have some sharp teeth in that mouth there that help them bring down gigantic mice. Yeah. Also, a single bite from one of these snakes would be so deadly that it could hurt your feelings and mildly inconvenience your day.
Ben, I was expecting some gigantic man-eating python, not some little ball python.
Well, that might be one of the misconceptions about pythons. Not all species are super huge. In fact, most of them tend to stay rather small, like the ball python here.
But she's still gonna want to take down something made of meat, like a human, right?
That is a great question. And I think the best way to answer that question is to demonstrate it. So, is there a brave volunteer out there in the audience who'd like to help us out? Your hand shot up right away, you look very brave. So why don't you, a Spider-Man shirt, you can come right up here. Yeah, awesome. Just wend your way through there, slither through like a snake, and come up here on stage. Perfect. All right, buddy. Thanks for being willing to help us out. First off, what's your name? Grayson? All right, Grayson. You realize what you signed up for? No? All right, well then let me explain it to you. You're going to help us find out if snakes like to eat people. Huh? You cool with that?
Yeah.
Awesome. See, I knew you looked like a brave kid. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put this snake on the ground, and on the count of 3, I need you to run across the stage to Megan there. Just to Megan. Make sure you don't run off the stage there. And we're going to see if she's going to chase you and get you, all right?
Are we sure this is safe?
Well, there's only one way to find out. Are you ready, Grayson? All right, then here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Go, 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 faster!
Oh, wow. Yeah, she's just slowly going. You can give me a high five and take a seat back downstage. You can give her a round of applause.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Well, she's hardly going there, isn't she?
Yeah.
So maybe the things we've seen about snakes have been a little bit over-sensationalized, but I think the truth about them is even more fascinating. We see in Genesis that God created everything in 6 literal 24-hour days, about 6,000 years ago. He created the animals on day 5 and 6. On day 5, we get the flying and sea creatures. On day 6, we get the creeping things. And she just kind of crept there slowly along the stage, so she's a day 6 animal, right?
That's correct. In fact, she belongs to a very special group of animals that most of them would have been made on day 6. And that, of course, is the reptiles. But what makes a reptile a reptile? Well, there's at least 2 things that set reptiles apart from other animals God has made. For one, do any of you guys know what reptiles have covering their skin? You can shout it out if you think you know. Scales. Yeah, that's correct. You guys are very smart. We also like to say that reptiles are ectothermic. That's a big fancy word. It simply means that they don't produce their own body heat like we do. So you may have heard the word cold-blooded used to describe that. Now, with that being said, there are actually 5 major categories of reptiles that are still alive to this day. Those animals that have scales and are ectothermic. Now, snakes is one of those categories, so that actually leaves 4 more. So, I want to know if you guys know any of those categories of reptiles. If you think you know one, raise your hand and I'll call on you. What do you think? Alligators and crocodiles, that's a great one. Yep, that's one of our major categories. What do you think? Geckos are lizards. Yep, that's another one of our major categories there. Tortoises and turtles, that's a great one. Now, you guys have guessed all but one so far. There's one more left. It's a very special type. What? Tuatara? You know about the tuatara?
Yeah.
I'm very impressed guessed, yeah, the tuatara is a really cool looking animal. It looks like a lizard, but it's not a lizard. It's its own type of creature, and they're found on the island of New Zealand. And they're pretty interesting, but we're not talking about the tuatara today. We're talking about snakes. We want to know what makes snakes such special reptiles. So let's go ahead and meet another type of reptile that is oftentimes compared to snakes.
Yeah, here he is. Can everyone wave really big and say, hi, Rudder? Great job. This is Rudder, our blue-tongued snake, native to Irian. Now, if you had to say what was the main difference between snakes and lizards, what is it?
Okay, we got feet, we got legs, and you know what? Those are great guesses, because you know what? It is true that all snakes don't have any legs at all. But did you know that it isn't true that all lizards have legs? There are some species of lizards, such as the Sheltopusik or the European legless lizard, that don't have any legs at all. But we know that they are lizards and not snakes. Well, how do we know that exactly? As it turns out, what you're really going to want to look for is carefully on the faces of these animals, because you see, lizards have a couple things on their head and on their face that snakes do not have. Like what, Megan?
Well, for one, you may notice the holes on the side of Rudder's face. Now, what are those holes? Ears. Very good. Those are ears that he's using to hear me with, just like you all can. Now, snakes do not have external ears. Instead, they have internal ears to help them feel vibrations. So if you were to walk up to a snake in your path and you scream back, say, ah, a snake, get away, kill it. All that snake sees you doing is, and you look very silly to that snake.
So that's one major difference, but another actually has to do with the eyes. Did you know that you're never going to win a staring contest with a snake simply because they cannot blink at you, because they do not have eyelids? Yep, correct. Now, most species of lizard do have eyelids. So that's really what you want to look out for. Look out for those ear holes, look out for those eyelids. That's going to tell you the true difference between a legless lizard and a snake. But hang on just a moment. You may be wondering yourselves, well, if a snake doesn't have any eyelids, then how does it protect its eyes?
That is a great question. Well, they have what we call spectacles, which are scales covering their eyes. Now, it'd be very unfortunate if that's the only pair of spectacles they got, because what happens when they get scratched up or dirty? Well, thankfully, they shed their skin. Has anyone out here ever seen a snake shed outside or maybe even inside before? Yeah, if you haven't, here's what one looks like. So if you go to the very top, you can see those two holes that we call the spectacles. Right there. So this works for those spectacles, but also every single scale covering their body. This gives them a glossy, shiny, almost slimy appearance.
Now, I have heard it said many times that snakes are slimy creatures, but you know what? That is a myth. They don't produce any slime at all, and we'd love to demonstrate that as well. So is there someone out there who'd like to touch our snake to show everyone it's not slimy? How about you right there in the green jacket? Yeah, important to you. You don't have to come up on stage, you can just stand right there for me. Yeah, just right there. Perfect. All right, first off, what's your name? Penelope? All right. You want to go ahead and show everyone a proper way to touch one of our snakes? Just take two fingers, run them gently down her back, just like that. There you go. Now that should feel pretty dry. Does that feel dry to you? Yeah, pretty dry? Awesome. Well, thank you for helping us out. You can take a seat. You guys want to give her a round of applause for helping us out? Now, if anyone else is interested in touching a snake, we'll have that opportunity at the end of the presentation. You'll all be invited to come up to that yellow line. We will have several snakes from the presentation that you can touch. So stick around till the end if you're interested in that. But for now, we want to demonstrate snakes are not slimy creatures. That's a myth. In fact, we as people, with the sweat we produce and the oil from our skin, we're a little bit more slimy than snakes are, which is interesting to think about. But if you do think about it, it would not be helpful for a snake to be slimy because they have to move, and they are really good at moving, even though they don't have any legs. To make up for that lack of legs, their body is extremely long, with lots of extra bones in their back, lots of extra ribs on their side, and lots of muscles covering all of it. Way more than we have as human beings. And this is what gives them their incredible ability to move. They're so flexible, they can tie themselves into a knot, they can move along the ground in that S-shaped motion and push off the ground and slither forward. Now, just a real quick side note, a lot of people think snakes are just a head with a really long tail, but you know what? Their tails tend to be pretty short. You want to show everyone where Hannah's tail is?
Yeah, about right there in my left hand.
Yeah, so they have a pretty short tail, pretty long body, and that is why they're so good at moving around. Now, snakes are so good at moving, you can find snakes in all sorts of different environments. You can find some swimming through the water, some digging through the ground. There's even some in Asia that can kind of glide or parachute through the air. There's also plenty of species that are very comfortable climbing. So let's go ahead and meet a snake that is very well known for spending a lot of its time climbing. Her name is Delilah, and she is a Taiwan beauty snake. This is a species of snake that is native to the island of Taiwan off the coast of China. They spend a lot of time up in the trees and climbing around up in caves. They have a long prehensile tail they can use to grab onto a branch or a part of the cave, and they are strong enough to pull their entire body back up into whatever they're holding onto with their tail just by hanging on with their tail. If you were as strong as one of these snakes, that would mean that you could grab onto monkey bars with your toes and pull your entire body into a standing position. So these guys are really strong. Now they use that ability to dangle low over caves in order to hunt some of their favorite foods. What do we oftentimes find flying in and out of caves? Bats, right. So these guys will hunt bats. They will dangle low over the cave, and when a bat flies by, they will strike out and grab it in order to have a delicious meal. But regardless of whether snakes are climbing around up in the trees or down on the ground, they have to have some very special senses to help them navigate through their environment. And God has given snakes some incredible senses, hasn't he?
Yes, you may notice that our snakes have been flicking their tongue out at you. Now they're not trying to be rude, what are they doing? Smelling. Very good, they're smelling you guys. So they're going to collect your scent on the tip of their tongue and then pull that back into the roof of their mouth where their Jacobson's organ is, and then that interprets those scents. But that's not the only sense that snakes have, is it?
That's right, because being able to smell their tongue is a very special sense that pretty much all snakes have, but there's another special sense that not all snakes have. Let's go ahead and meet one of those. His name is Cyrus, and he is a jungle carpet python. This is a species of snake that is native to Australia. And they get the name carpet python because doesn't he look exactly like a carpet? Yeah, I don't think he looks much like a carpet either. But apparently the patterns on some of these snakes looks like the carpets from the region where they're from. So that might be why they're called carpet pythons. But regardless, they're a really cool snake, and they have a really cool sense. You may notice some pits on the side of his cheeks, on the side of his face there. Now those pits contain temperature sensing cells, and that's connected to his brain with the optic nerve. So what that means is that he can actually see heat. It's like he has military thermal vision. And you can imagine that's very helpful for him when it comes to hunting his favorite types of prey, such as little kids, right? No, he's not going to be going after little kids, even though we do give off our own body heat. Snakes do not see us as a food source. Snakes are more afraid of us than we are of them. You don't have to really be worried about a snake trying to eat you. There are very few snakes that could get big enough to even consider trying to eat a person, and very few snakes that get big enough that could potentially eat a person. But what snakes do like to eat is actually very helpful to us. You see, many species of snakes, especially the ones like Cyrus here that can see heat, will use it to hunt things like small mammals, things like mice and rats. And as cute as those animals can be, they could be quite a problem if they didn't have predators hunting them, keeping their populations under control. They can easily populate an area and spread disease, destroy food. So if it weren't for animals like snakes, we would be in quite a bit of a problem. We can be very grateful that we have them because they play a very important role in the environment as pest control. Now, when it comes to how a snake catches its prey, it depends on the species, but a lot of them will use constriction, like Cyrus here. He's a python. He uses constriction, meaning he bites on, wraps his claws around, and squeezes to subdue his prey. Now, pythons are pretty famous for constricting, but they're probably not the most famous species of constricting snake. I'd actually say that the most famous species of constricting snake is actually the one we're going to show you next.
Yes, and here she comes. This is Miss Ruby. She's a Colombian red-tailed boa constrictor, and she's about 8 feet long, weighs about 22 pounds. But she's not the largest snake in the world, is she? Do you guys know what the largest snake in the world is? Starts with the letter A? Yeah, good job. The green anaconda, to be specific. And we don't have one of those to show you. So we'd like to show you with a tape measure just how long they can get. So if we have another volunteer, someone relatively tall.
Let's see. How about you there in the blue shirt? Yeah. We'll just have you stand right here. Yes. What's your name? Arave, did I get that right? All right, awesome. Can you help us out by taking this end of the tape measure, and can you walk all the way to that end of the wall there? Perfect. Keep going. Keep going. Wonderful. All right, now that you're there, can you lift that high above your head so everyone can see? All right, perfect. You're doing a great job. Stay right there. Okay, so right now we are at 19 feet. That's a pretty big snake. If you saw a snake that big, you'd probably be pretty impressed. But you know what? That's not nearly as big as the green anaconda. So let's walk out to another incredible 33 feet in length. The largest size of the green anaconda ever discovered. But hang on a minute. We are not done yet. Because even though the green anaconda is the largest snake alive actually see evidence of a snake that is now extinct that got even bigger.
Yes, scientists found vertebra from a titanoboa, reaching a whopping length of 45 feet. That is longer than a school bus. You did a great job. You can drop that tape measure on the ground. You can give her a round of applause. Now, that's a really long snake. They must have a really large appetite and have to eat a lot of food a lot of the time, right, Ben?
Well, you would imagine they would, but here's another really sensational thing about snakes. They really don't have to eat that often, and there's a couple things that help explain that. For one, because they're ectothermic, because they don't produce their own body heat, they just don't need as much energy. But for another, when they do eat, they tend to eat one really big meal that's going to last them for a long time. And because of this, most snakes can go several weeks without eating, some can go several months without eating, and some of the big ones, if they had a huge meal, they could even go up to a year or more without eating, which is really impressive. Now, sometimes people look at those giant snakes and they think, man, those reticulated pythons, those anacondas, they don't have to eat that often, and boy, would I look cool holding one and showing it off to my friends. I mean, doesn't Megan look pretty cool holding that medium-sized snake right there? Yeah, pretty darn cool. But here's where the problem comes in. Do those snakes really make good pets for most people? Well, maybe they could make a good pet if you had years upon years of large snake handling experience, if you had tons of extra time and money to spend on a giant enclosure with very specific requirements, and if you didn't mind feeding them really large animals like pigs and rabbits, then maybe they could be a good pet, but really most people don't meet those requirements, so we really say you probably shouldn't get one as a pet because they are really difficult, and if you do it wrong, bad things can happen there. But the problem comes in when people don't think it through. You can find those giant snakes as little teeny tiny babies, because even the biggest ones start off life very small. You can find them in pet stores, get them as a pet, gets too big, then what do? Well, sometimes people just abandon them, and that's never a good thing. That is actually what happened to Ruby. Ruby was somebody's pet. They left her abandoned in their apartment, so now we're giving her a home. But not all snakes are as lucky as Ruby. Sometimes they're let go outside, and if that happens, they could die outside because they might not be able to survive in that region of the world, or maybe they survive so well that they produce more snakes. You got a bunch of snakes living in a region of the world they're not native to, that cause problems for the native wildlife that aren't used to dealing with a giant snake. You get imbalances in the ecosystem, it's just a big mess. We call that an invasive species. That is actually what is happening in states like Florida, where the Burmese python, a giant snake from Asia, has been released into the Florida Everglades. It's causing problems there. Delilah over there on the tree, her species, while a beautiful snake in Taiwan, is an invasive species of snake in Okinawa, Japan. So the point here is that we always want to make sure we are being responsible with creatures that we have under our care, including the slithery ones. And there is some good biblical reason for that as well, isn't there?
There is. In Genesis, we see that we are made in God's image. We are not animals, and He gave us dominion over the animals. But that means that we're not supposed to treat them with disrespect, right? We see in Proverbs 12:10, whoever is righteous has regard for the life of his beast, but the mercy of the wicked is cruel. This includes your cute, fluffy, cuddly beast, but also your creepy, scaly beast as well.
Now with all that being said, I want to take a step back here for a moment, because we have been talking about some of the largest snakes in the world, which reminds me, we haven't yet talked about the strongest snake in the world, and that's because I've been saving it. We have it right here. So, Karina, I'm going to need your help for this. Can you grab that end? I'll grab this end. Let's get ready to show. All right. Here we go. And just set it down right there. Okay. Let's see how she's doing. I'm going to need your help to lift her up here. If we can just make sure we find the head. Okay. You want to go ahead and grab that and make sure you get right under the coils. All right. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Here she is. This is Hezekiah, the California king snake, and she is the strongest snake in the world. You guys look like you need some good medicine. Let me explain myself. The California king snake is considered the strongest snake in the world, but that is proportionally. Pound for pound, there is no other snake that can squeeze tighter than this one. Well, what does that mean exactly? What that means is that if she were the same size as Ruby there, or if Ruby were the same size as her, Hezekiah would always win when you compare how tightly she squeezes. Because king snakes just have to squeeze super tightly. There's a reason for that. They love to eat lots of things, but especially reptiles. And reptiles are very difficult to subdue by constriction. And they'll eat lots of different types of reptiles, right? But especially snakes, yeah? That's why they are called king snakes. They eat other snakes. If you think about it, there's very few things that are better for a snake to eat than another snake. It's just a long noodle that fits perfectly in their body. So they eat other snakes all the time, especially rattlesnakes. And you guys probably know, rattlesnakes are venomous, but king snakes like Hezekiah here are not venomous. So how do they hunt a rattlesnake without getting killed? Well, there's a couple things that help them out here. For one, they are resistant to the venom of the rattlesnake, so even if they do get bitten, it probably won't be the end of the world for them. But usually, they do not get bitten, because the king snake is very clever in how it hunts a rattlesnake. You see, they will slither up nice and quietly right to the head of that rattlesnake, and then they will strike out at blinding speed, grab the rattlesnake by the jaws, clamping them shut as they bite down on it so it can't bite them back. They will then proceed to subdue it, and then they will swallow it whole.
Ooh, now most snakes swallow their prey whole, and to show you this, I'm going to need help from everyone in the audience. You can open your mouth as wide as you can and say, ah. Very good. That shows that us as humans can open our mouths about 30 degrees. But snakes can open their jaws up to 130 degrees, which is what my dentist would like me to do when I visit him. During this, they will have part of their trachea or their windpipe stick out so that they can keep breathing. And they also have this bone here called the quadrate bone, which allows them to move their bones like arms to walk their prey down their mouth. With all of this, if we had jaws that could open as wide as a snake jaw, we'd be able to swallow watermelons whole. Now, please don't go home and try that. You will not succeed.
Now, that might be one of the most impressive things that snakes can do. Now, when it comes to what snakes like to eat, pretty much all species we know of are carnivores. You guys know what the word carnivore means, right? They only eat meat. But we do have to remember that it wasn't always this way, because the Bible tells us that in the beginning, when God created the world, He said it was very good, and that every creature He had made, which would have included snakes, was eating plants. Something obviously happened to change all that. That was mankind's disobedience against God. We call that sin. The first two people, Adam and Eve, they disobeyed God. Because of their disobedience, creation became cursed. Now there are bad things in the world. Now animals do have to sometimes kill and eat other animals in order to survive, including the snakes. And we as the descendants of Adam and Eve, we have inherited their very nature to disobey God. Because of that, we are guilty before Him, deserving of His wrath and punishment. That may be very sad if that is where things concluded, but it is not. There's good news as well, which we will talk about. But before we do, we ought to mention something else. The Bible tells us that in the beginning, everything was eating plants. That would have included snakes. But snakes have really sharp teeth. A lot of people say animals with sharp teeth can only eat meat. But you know what? That's not true. There's plenty of animals that have sharp teeth and eat plants. A couple of quick examples. Panda bears, very sharp teeth, eat bamboo. Fruit bats, very sharp teeth, they eat fruit. In our zoo, the animal with the longest fangs here is our two-toed sloth, Felix, and he eats plants. So just because something has sharp teeth doesn't mean it has to eat meat. We can't trust what God's word says, that originally everything, including snakes, was eating plants in the beginning. It is only because of mankind's sin that now they have to eat meat. And snakes will use their teeth to help them eat meat. Snakes like Hezekiah here that are constrictors, they use those sharp hook-like teeth to bite on and hold on to their prey so it can't escape while they wrap it up. But not all snakes use their teeth quite that way. There's other species of snakes that have very specialized teeth that actually help them to inject venom.
Yes, and I think the most impressive venomous snake would have to be the gaboon viper. It holds 2 world records alive today. For one, it has the longest fangs, for up to 2 inches in length in their mouth. And for 2, it can go the longest amount of time without pooping, 420 days to be exact. Well, we don't have to worry about the gaboon viper here in the United States, but we do have some other venomous snakes, groups that we do have to worry about, right? We have the rattlesnake, the coral snake, the cottonmouth, and the copperhead, right? We have those 4 groups of snakes we have to worry about. But since we're talking about venomous snakes, I think it's about time we meet one. What do you guys think? Yeah, all right. Get her out.
All right, be careful, Megan. Yeah. This is her first time handling this venomous snake, so we're just gonna wish her a bit of confidence there.
Yeah. All right, and here she is. This is Sarah. She's a Western hognose, and she is very venomous if you are a toad or frog. And so we don't really have to worry about her, as she has rear fangs that help her eat toads and frogs. So that she produces that venom so that they don't constrict, and then she eats them.
Yes. Her venom isn't dangerous to a human being.
Exactly.
But she is technically a venomous snake, isn't
That's
she?
true. So
but how do you tell if a snake is venomous or not?
That's a great question. Well, I've heard some myths to say if a snake is venomous or not. For one, I hear it's by the shape of their head. If they have a triangular shaped head, then they are venomous. If they have a non-triangular shaped head or a rounded shaped head, then they are non-venomous. But that doesn't really work. Non-venomous snakes can actually move the bones in their head into a triangle to make the predator fool and think that they are venomous. Also, the coral snake, the most drop-for-drop deadly snake here in the United States, has a rounded-shaped head. I've also heard it's by the shape of their eyes. If they have rounded eyes, like ours, rounded pupils, then they are non-venomous. If they have cat-like or slit pupils, then they are venomous. But that also doesn't really work. Are you guys a safe distance from Sarah? Is she gonna bite you where she is? If you were to hold her up and look at her eyes and say, can this snake bite me and kill me? Are you a little bit too close? Yeah. Yeah, probably. Also, the coral snake does have rounded pupils. So, Ben, how do we know? If a snake is venomous, what should we do?
Well, if you see a venomous snake, then go straight up to it and grab it right away, right? No! Don't ever do that! Also, if you're not 100% sure if a snake is venomous, just leave it alone. Did you know that the vast majority of snake bites occur when people try to pick up, grab, or kill a snake? That's when people get bitten. They are more than happy to leave you alone if you leave them alone. They're not out to get you. They're not going to chase you down and get you or anything like that. They don't protect their young in that way. They're not aggressive like that. They're going to defend themselves if they get cornered, but they'd otherwise just be left alone. They're actually more afraid of us than we are of them. So if you leave them alone, you should be fine. But still, lots of people are very afraid of those venomous snakes, and no one wants to get bitten by one. But I do think we need to put that fear in perspective. Because did you know that these venomous snakes here in the United States, they really don't kill that many people every year. Only about 5 people die from those venomous snakes every year. There's actually a lot of other animals in the United States that kill way more people, such as horses, cows, pigs, deer, and even dogs kill more people every year than those venomous snakes. Also, you are far more likely to die from being struck by a bolt of lightning, having a coconut fall on top of your head, or even having a vending machine fall on top of you and crush you. But when was the last time you saw someone looking at a vending machine going, "Ah, a vending machine, run away!" Probably didn't see that, right? Now that being said, on a much more serious note, we do have vending machines here at the Ark Encounter, so please be careful. We don't want them to get any of you. I'm just messing with you a little bit. Obviously, you don't have to be afraid of a vending machine if you're not shaking it, causing it to fall down on top of you, because that's how they kill people. You have to cause it to happen. The same can be said for most bites by venomous snakes. You have to cause that to happen. Obviously, the occasional accident can happen if you step close to one and didn't see it, but if you're aware of your surroundings, if you're paying attention, if you see one and you leave it alone, you should be fine. But nevertheless, snakes tend to get a really bad rap. Probably more so than any other animal out there. People are just so afraid of them that there's all sorts of accusations made against snakes. In fact, I've even heard it said that snakes are evil creatures. And you know what? I don't think that's fair. So let's go ahead and meet our final snake that's going to help us learn a little bit about this. His name is Joseph. Here he comes. Joseph is a rainbow boa. This is a species of snake that is native to the rainforests of South America. Now, he has a very beautiful ability we'll tell you about in a bit, but let's revisit that idea that snakes are evil. Why do people say that? Sometimes it's because of all the myths and legends that's made up about them. I hope we've done a lot to explain why those just aren't true. But also people will say that snakes are evil because they will actually point to the Bible to justify it. They say, well, Satan took the form of a serpent to deceive Adam and Eve, so that must mean that snakes are evil, right? Well, here's the thing. Satan and the demons, they have possessed other animals, and they have been compared to other animals that we don't consider to be evil. Satan is compared to a roaring lion. Demons have possessed pigs. We don't consider those animals to be evil, so why should we consider snakes to be evil? But here is the most important reason why we know that snakes are not evil. Snakes are just animals. They are not made in the image of God, so they cannot choose right from wrong. They are not moral beings. They operate off of instinct, and that means that they are incapable of choosing to do anything evil. But we as people, we are made in the image of God. We can't choose right from wrong. We can't do evil in the sight of the Lord, so we actually have a responsibility to treat God's creatures, including the snakes, in a way that is honoring to Him. But with that all being said, even though we know that snakes are not evil creatures, we have to balance that with the knowledge that ever since the Garden of Eden, our relationship with God and our relationship with the creatures He has made, including the snakes, has been very broken and messed up. But you know what? It is not always going to be that way. We have some amazing promises that we look forward to from God. And that is actually why we love to show this snake in particular, because of a very special ability that he has that actually reminds us of God's promises.
Yes, this whole time you may be wondering why he's called a rainbow boa. Now he is beautiful in his own right, but rainbow might be the last thing you think of until he slithers under direct sunlight, when his scales refract a prism and shine a rainbow back into our eyes, which kind of reminds me of the rainbow in the Bible.
That's right. God gave the rainbow as a symbol of his promise that he would never again flood the world with water. God also promised Noah and his family and the rest of humanity that whoever entered by the door of the ark would be saved from the coming judgment of the flood. And in the same way, God has provided Jesus Christ as our door that we can enter through to be saved from God's coming judgment on the sin of the world. The Bible tells us that God sent his son Jesus Christ to die on the cross for our wrongdoing, for our sin, that he rose again 3 days later, proving he could pay that penalty. We have the promise from God that whoever repents and puts their faith and trust in Jesus, that they will be saved. But not only that, we have the promise that one day God is going to restore his creation. We read in the Bible, in the book of Isaiah, that one day the wolf will dwell the lamb, the lion will eat straw like the ox. But here's something I think is amazing about that verse. Snakes are included in God's restored creation. Because in that same verse we read that children will be playing around venomous snakes and they will not be afraid. Because those snakes won't hurt them. It'll be a very good world as God intended it to be once again. So if you don't know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, I encourage you to get to know him today. And if you do know him, then I encourage you to think about how you can share the good news with other people and how you can point to some of the most sensational, slithery creatures that God has made and highlight the way they glorify God with their incredible design. So with that, this is the time where we are now going to invite you guys to come up to this yellow line. We'll have several of our snakes from the presentation. You'll be allowed to touch them gently on the back.